Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Embassy, we thank you for joining us in an afternoon to celebrate Philippine contributions to the English language. And to officially welcome us to this afternoon's signing and turnover ceremony, I'd like to ask you to help me welcome the ambassador, the Philippine ambassador to the Court of St. James, His Excellency Antonio M. Lagdameo.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. One of the Philippines' earliest brushes with English happened from 1762 to 1764 during the British occupation of Manila. Yet the encounter was too brief to truly make a lasting impression. It was not until the American occupation at the turn of the 20th century when a radical shift in the Philippines' lingua franca began to take place. Between 1901 and 1902, the United States sent 1,074 American teachers to the Philippines to establish a new public school system, to teach basic education, and to train Filipino teachers with English as the medium of instruction. They were called the Thomasites after the USS Thomas, the ship which transported the last batch of these teachers to our shores. Since then, English has been replaced, or has replaced Spanish as one of the major languages in the Philippines alongside Filipino. In fact, it's one of our official languages. As is usually the case with languages, even though English was the language of the colonizer, over the years, Filipinos have also colonized the English language, thus giving birth to a new variety of the language, which is now known as Philippine English, a product of the indigenization of English in order to suit the prevailing socio-cultural conditions in the Philippines. It is quite noticeable that many of the Philippines' contributions to the Oxford English Dictionary are words related to food and popular culture, ranging from Bongga, which is a popular Filipino term meaning fabulous or impressive, to pandesal, a Filipino bread roll that has already made its way to the UK and other parts of the world. These words reflect a sense of ownership of the English language by Filipinos at home and abroad. The officers and staff of the Philippine Embassy join me in welcoming you to this event that looks at the unique and creative ways that Filipinos have come to call the English language as one of our own. A special welcome, of course, goes to our friends from the Oxford English Dictionary who have made this gathering possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. At this point, please help us welcome, for his remarks on Philippine English and earlier Oxford English Dictionary editions, Mr. John Simpson.
Thank you very much. I'm John Simpson. I was chief editor of the Oxford English Dictionary for 20 years, from 1994 until I retired about 5 years ago. But I was working on the OED for 20 years before that, so I've been there quite a long time. I'm going to say a few words about how the OED in the 19th century and the early 20th century dealt with World English, Philippine English, and then I'm not going to talk for very long, and then Danica is going to take over and talk about the exciting modern period of the interaction of English and the Philippines. So language doesn't just let us express our thoughts and desires, hear those of other people. Coded inside a language is a history of its past. And this tells us what was important to the speakers of language over history, and on a grander scale, It tells us about international relations and how different countries viewed each other. Over the next few minutes, Danica and I are going to talk about a particular relationship, that between English speakers in the Philippines and in the Philippine diaspora, and English speakers elsewhere in the world. Danica will talk about the present day, but Oxford, as you know, doesn't like to abandon the past, so I'll say a few words about the history. First of all, though, the Oxford English Dictionary, of which that's the first volume of 20 in the second edition, published in 1989, when I'd been there only about 14 years. I used to say that no one today would ever think of venturing on a project like the OED. It seemed such a massive idea, so redolent of Victorian expansionism, the spirit of classifying everything so that it was known and certain and fixed. But since the Human Genome Project, huge crowdsourced databases on Ancestry, for example, billions of pages of scanned and searchable historical newspapers, and crowdfunding for charity or even to pay for university places, I've had to reconsider my opinion. But still, the OED is remarkable. All 75 or so members of the editorial staff in Oxford and in America and elsewhere are proud to be contributing to an astounding international effort on something so central as our language. When the OED began in the third quarter of the 19th century, its scope was to provide the history of all or almost all of the words of the English language. It took the original editors about 50 years to do that. They included words that dated back to the earliest days of the English language, some 1500 years earlier, words that English had borrowed from French, from France or from Italy or from Holland, everything they could lay their hands on to create a supremely accurate lexical history of English. You might think that they were more interested in English, British and European matters, but you'd be wrong. The scope of the project, even at the end of the Victorian period, was English as she was spoken anywhere in time and anywhere in the world. And in line with its objectives, the Oxford editors' researchers recorded a word of Tagalog origin, a bakar, which you've seen a picture of there, a palm which produces Manila hemp, on the fifth page of the dictionary, and that's out of about 20,000 pages overall that were produced over a 50-year period. So more or less on day one of the dictionary being published in its first instalment at the beginning of A, on page 5, there was a word with Philippine implications. They were watching out for Philippine vocabulary from the very start. And this entry, Abakar, is worth further scrutiny. It tells of an episode in the story of the relationship between the Philippines and the Anglophone West. The earliest record of Abakar in English dates from 1751. It's one of a series of natural products, raw materials as an industrialist might call them, for which the Philippines was particularly known in Britain, France and Spain. Those early years saw other natural products, such as medrinique, fibre from the sago palm, I understand not a word that's particularly well known these days, cogon, a native grass, and piña, pineapple leaf fibre, find their way into the OED. Abakar didn't enter directly into English from Tagalog. It was mediated by French. It's very common to find that trading words first come into English in translations of texts first written in other European languages. So the English weren't always the creative discoverers of words that we might like to think today, but we often got them through other European countries that had been trading in that area earlier. But this stratum of vocabulary testifies to emerging trading relationships, now fossilized and immortalized in the language. Manila was the big word, denoting any number of commodities, often made from the raw materials I mentioned earlier, known in English from 1697. The Westerners marvelled at the wildlife of the Philippines, the arboreal colugo, first noticed in print in English in 1702, and the tarsier of 1777-74. Europeans were fascinated by the variety of peoples in the Philippines, the Bajau, the Papanyan, and Tagalog themselves. These are the kind of Philippine words that the traditional lexicography of Oxford in the 19th and early 20th century discovered, right up to the third quarter of the 20th century. The book and periodical sources we read looking for evidence of the language, the novels we scanned, told us one story of how English-speaking people appreciated the Philippines. Maybe we didn't dig down deep enough, or maybe we were trying to do it all from Oxford and missing the everyday and the ephemeral vocabulary encountered when you're living in the Philippines. Whatever the case, the situation has changed now, and now it's Danica's turn to tell you about a new reality.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. And of course, at this point, please help me welcome Dr. Danica Salazar to tell us more about Philippine contributions to the Oxford English Dictionary.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Master. John. I cannot tell you what a pleasure it is for me to be here among you, and what an honor it is to be part of one of the very first activities of Central Rizal in London, speaking here in the Philippine Embassy near this image of the great man himself. So full disclosure, I am a big Rizal fan, and I was as excited about Central Rizal opening in London as I was about Jollibee coming here. So we are here today to celebrate Philippine English in the OED. And you might think that in this context, there would be nothing to say about Jose Rizal. We all know Rizal as a great man of letters, but not of English letters. His greatest works were written in Spanish or in his mother tongue, Tagalog. But you'd be surprised to know that Rizal has made his mark on the Oxford English Dictionary, that his name is among those of the thousands of authors that are cited in the OED's illustrative first quotations. And also, it's interesting to note that Rizal's appearances in the OED have one thing in common, and that is they're all about food. Charles Derbyshire's translations of Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, titled The Social Cancer and The Reign of Greed, respectively, and both published in 1912, are the sources of first quotations for the Filipino food words balut, sinigang, pansit, and pansiteria. I love this actually, that of all the possible words in his two great novels, those four food words are the ones that made it into the OED. We revere Rizal as our national hero, admire him as a genius and as a polymath, but very rarely do we think of him as an actual human being. Yet nothing humanizes him more, makes him seem more of a person who lived and breathed, than talking about the food he ate. He ate adobo at home, albondigas in school at Ateneo, and when he was a poor student in Europe, he loved being invited to dinner by Filipinos so he could have pancit for free. He was the pride of the Malay race, yes, but he was also a Filipino who loved free pancit, just like me, and a lot of you here, I'm sure. Nakalala ko dyan. And now, pancit is in the OED, with fellow pancit lover Rizal's name attached to it. Right now, the OED is undergoing its first thoroughgoing revision and update, since it was first published in 1928. This project employs over 70 editors based in Oxford and New York. The dictionary's last print edition, the second, the one that Sean will be signing today, was published in 1989 and consisted of 20 volumes. But its third and latest edition is accessible through OED Online, where updates are published quarterly. It is to this current third edition that we have recently added a significant number of new words from Philippine English. To be sure, many of these words are related to Filipino food culture. Rizal's 4 words, plus, let me just take a breath here, quite a long list. Adobo, bagoong, baon, bihon, buko juice, calamansi, carinderia, ensaymada, halo-halo, kare-kare, leche flan. Okay, I'm starting to get hungry now. Lechon, pandesal, puto, sisig, sorbetes, toron, ube. We have also added dozens of other words relating to things beyond the stuff we eat and drink. We also have words for the stuff we wear. Barong Tagalog, Barot Saya, the stuff we use. Sikay kit, salaset, tabo. The stuff we call each other. Aling, mang, ate, kuya, lola, lolo, tita, tito. And the stuff we say. Bahala na. Uy, KKB. Mabuhay. Bongga. Adding these words to the OED involved hours and hours of meticulous, painstaking research, not just by editors like me, but also by etymologists, phoneticists, bibliographers, and library researchers, to ensure that our definitions, pronunciations, and etymologies are accurate, and that our illustrative quotations are cited correctly and show authentic usage. Now is the point when you may ask me, why? Why go put in all this effort just to include Philippine English in the OED? The reason is simple. The OED is an historical dictionary, and its very reason for being is not just to tell you what words mean. You can consult any old dictionary for that. Its purpose is to tell the history of the English language through the history of its words. And now more than ever, this is a history that cannot be told without recognizing the role played by the millions of second language or foreign language speakers of English in various parts of the world, Filipinos among them. English may have been a foreign language imposed on us by a colonial power, but for good or for ill, it is now ours. As renowned Filipino writer Jimeno Abad once said, we have colonized it too. Adding Philippine English words to the OED is about something we hear a lot these days, representation. We in the OED believe that the Philippines, just like this country, is part of the English-speaking world, and as such, Philippine culture, Philippine history, the Philippine experience must be represented in this great work of scholarship on the English language. You may have noticed from John's examples that earlier editions of the OED, as receptive as they were to words from the Philippines, tended to include loanwords relating to flora, fauna, ethnic groups, and other items of mostly historical and anthropological interest. This was because editors of these earlier editions were limited by the chiefly British and American research sources they had access to in Oxford at the time. But I'm glad to say that we no longer have the same limitations. The internet has given us wider access to non-UK and non-US sources of linguistic evidence and faster communication with a worldwide network of consultants. We can now shift our attention towards more contemporary lexis that reflects the mechanisms of language contact and lexical innovation shaping the vocabulary of Philippine English. We think it is important for Filipino words in the dictionary to be illustrated by quotations from works written by Filipino authors in Filipino publications. So, if you look, for example, at our entry for, balot, for example, apart from the first quotation from Rizal, the word is also exemplified by a quotation from one of our national artists, Joaquin, and another from that esteemed Filipino publication, Star Studio Magazine. So, joke yun. We are Filipinos, so we don't go to the loo like the British or to the restroom like Americans. We go to the comfort room. We eat dirty ice cream and we cook in dirty kitchens. We accomplish forms and have advanced watches. We eat sisig for pulutan when we go out on a gimmick with our barkada. We get high blood because Manila is so trafficked. We buy stuff from our suke in the sari-sari store. We chill in our salas, watching teleseries, getting kilig when our favorite love themes appear. We are Filipinos and we are multi-ethnic and multilingual, so we mix our languages when we speak. And just like any other speakers of any other language, we like to experiment with words. Not only is all that fine, the English lexicon, as well as the OED, becomes all the richer for it. By doing this lexicographic work, we in the OED hope to help in changing colonial attitudes towards English. By adding everyday words and quoting from ordinary users of English in social media, we hope to show that lexical innovation is not limited to the educated elite, but is the domain of all users of English. By including coinages that were formerly considered hideous aberrations, and adding audio pronunciations that put Philippine pronunciation alongside British and American pronunciations, we hope to do away with the deficit mentality that makes Filipinos feel insecure of their English just because they use different words and don't have an American twang. It's a small thing, but its impact can be big. If there is one person who has proven the power of words in effecting social change, and who has shown just how to take a colonial language and use it to forge a stronger sense of identity and national unity among a diverse people, is that guy over there. And I hear he loves pancit. Thank you and mabuhay.
Thank you, Danica. That was very bongga. So, at this point, please help me welcome Dr. Aryan Borlonan to tell us about the latest research on Philippine English.
Hello everyone, I flew from Tokyo for this event. Danica invited me to come here to talk about Philippine English. Recent research. I'm actually editing a new volume on. It's a handbook of Philippine English, and it's coming out within this year. And Danica is contributing for the lexicography of Philippine English. The most, I think, Danica. I always mention the work of Danica and Oxford English Dictionary in the country and their contribution in making sure that the new variety of English in the Philippines has stabilized or is at the point of stabilization. And yeah, it's this a very nice event to honor the work that Danica has done for Philippine English and also for other varieties of English. I think we've heard a very good history of Philippine English through our dear ambassador Lagdameo here. It was well said, and I thought it was a linguist speaking had I not seen him talking about that. And Danica mentioned also the quote by Henino Abad that English is now ours, we have colonized it too. And I like to actually, I opened that handbook by saying English is a language of the Filipinos. And it actually is the most widely spoken language in the Philippines, more than Tagalog, more than Filipino, more than Cebuano. It's rarely acknowledged as such, but that is reality. We are also one of the largest English-using societies in the world, larger than the United Kingdom, than Canada, and by recent census data. And English that has emerged in the Philippines has been localized, and I have mentioned earlier, stabilized. Ambassador Lagdameo also mentioned in the history, is rarely written in histories of Philippine English, but he mentioned that event in the 18th century when the British occupied Manila and the nearby port of in Cavite. And it didn't really have very much significance in the development of Philippine English, but that's a record of English language contact prior to American occupation of the Philippines. And of course, we know Rizal stayed here for a while, and one of his 3 goals was to study English. One of my goals in this visit, my second visit in London, is to see that house where he stayed, and I thought I want to have a picture beside that blue plaque. He stayed there. We are the most, we have the earliest documentations of a new variety of English, 1960s, almost as old as Indian English. But we are also we're the lone American lineage variety. We're the lone major American lineage variety. The other American lineage varieties would be Guam, Lebanon, but these are not really major national standard varieties, just like the Philippines. We are one of the youngest varieties. The English was only transplanted in the 18th century. In the 20th century, but we learned English very quickly from 0% of the population at the beginning of 1900s to almost 91% in our last major survey of language in 2013. And that made Brother Andrew Gonzalez remark in 2000 that the learning and acquisition of English in the Philippines is probably one of the most important and significant linguistic events in the history of mankind. Yes, and so I think it's very important that we have this story about Philippine English. We're standardizing it thanks to Oxford English Dictionary, the efforts of linguists, not only in the Philippines, I mean there's a lot of linguists working on Philippine English there, but also a lot of Filipinos outside the Philippines and also foreigners, and we have greatly summarized that in the handbook which I edited, and it's coming out October, so please buy. And we're very happy to be able to tell a most beautiful story of how English has been of and by the people who once resisted imperialism, which came along with what was once a foreign language, but eventually found freedom in listening, speaking, reading, writing, and thinking their ideals through this new language, which they now own. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, just the fact that Brother Andrew was also a foodie.
Yes.
Brother Andrew was a foodie. In fact, one of his last meals before he passed away was in my restaurant.
It's a very interesting fun fact, Your Excellency. At this point, we will now proceed with the turnover of the latest edition of the Oxford English Dictionary from the team of Oxford English Dictionary to the Philippine Embassy through Ambassador Antonio M. Lagdameo.